More than 50% of the members of U.S. Congress are millionaires, way more than the 8.8% of regular Americans. When the nation's leaders swim in wealth, how can they relate to the financial struggles of everyday folks, let alone make decisions in their best interest? The average annual salary across the U.S. in late 2023 hovered around $60,000. Now, most senators and representatives get a salary of $174,000 a year. Sounds hefty, right? Well, in reality, that six-figure paycheck pales in comparison to the fortunes of figures like Nancy Pelosi sitting comfortably above $200 million, Mitt Romney at $174 million, or Kevin Hern boasting a cool $361 million. So where does all that money come from? Nowadays, many politicians kick off their political careers already loaded. They come from wealthy families, have their own businesses, work high-paying jobs like being a lawyer, or strike it big in real estate. They start rich, get richer while in office, and step out of office right into lobbying gigs. Many politicians hit the jackpot in a two-step hustle, getting the seed money and supercharging it with the stinking fertilizer or the multiplier. The seed money raked in during their term includes the usual suspects like salary, book royalties, and donations. But the real game begins post-office. They dive into a pool of opportunities: lobbying gigs, lucrative speeches, consulting roles, business deals, and cushy corporate positions. It's a second wind of income that keeps the cash flowing. The multiplier is all about investments working their magic during their tenure and long after kicking the political bucket. Investments in stocks, real estate, and whatever else makes money grow like weeds. So while they might sell you on their public service spiel, behind the scenes, it's all about planting seeds and letting that stinking fertilizer work its magic. Being a politician comes with many perks: top-notch healthcare, solid retirement benefits, a team backing you up, fame, connections, and the golden ticket, access to insider info. Lawmakers are privy to tons of sensitive behind-the-scenes stuff. They're on committees, rubbing elbows with businesses day in and day out. This stuff affects the economy and, by extension, the stock market. They're ahead of the game, armed with knowledge way before the rest of us, and you bet they can make some savvy moves with it. In 2012, the Washington Post dug deep and discovered that before the 2008 meltdown, 34 lawmakers from both parties tweaked their financial portfolios 166 times within just 2 business days after chatting with the Fed and Treasury officials. So, while the economy was going down the drain, these lawmakers were raking in the cash. The same thing happened in early 2020. Just before the stock market took a nosedive, several U.S. politicians sold off millions in stocks. Coincidence? Or were they playing with insider info, knowing how severe the health crisis was about to get? It raises some eyebrows, to say the least. In January 2020, when the world was on the brink of shutdown, Republican Senator Richard Burr of North Carolina chaired the Senate Intelligence Committee. On January 24th, he and fellow senators received a confidential briefing from the CDC on the severity of the upcoming coronavirus pandemic. Shortly after, Burr sold stocks valued at $110,000, just hours before the White House announced the travel ban. Following the sale, he penned an op-ed for Fox News asserting the U.S.'s readiness to tackle the virus. By February 2020, Burr shifted over $1 million from stocks to safer Treasury bills. Kelly Loeffler, the former senator from Georgia, attended the same private CDC Senate Health Committee briefing as her colleague Richard Burr. The next day, she expressed gratitude in a tweet from the informative briefing. However, she failed to mention that shortly after the meeting, she and her husband offloaded stocks worth between $50,000 and $100,000. In the weeks leading up to the significant market crash on February 20th, they continued to sell stocks totaling $1.2 to $3.1 million. Loeffler had a unique advantage. access to information about the severity of the COVID-19 pandemic, allowing her to make well-timed stock sales. A classic case of knowledge translating into power. Another notable example is Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi, a Democrat from California and the former Speaker of the House. She's married to an investor, and together, their lawmaker-investor team has done so well that even TikTok users keep an eye on the Pelosis for stock trading advice. Over the span of 2 years after the 2008 financial crisis, the Pelosi's estimated net worth surged from $31 million to $100 million, marking a 220% increase, while the S&P 500 dropped by 13%. Pelosi's continued their financial upswing during the pandemic, with their net worth soaring to $171 million. That's the multiplier effect at play. Like we said before, having the upper hand in information is a significant edge for politicians. Take the Pelosi's, for instance. They offloaded $3 million in Google stock shortly before the Department of Justice announced they would sue Google on antitrust allegations. Meanwhile, Paul Pelosi was busy snagging millions of dollars worth of Tesla stock, conveniently timed with his wife making moves on laws that could directly swing Tesla's value thanks to hefty taxpayer-sponsored electric car subsidies. And don't forget the slick move of dumping millions in Nvidia stock just days before the US government declared restrictions on chip makers trading with China and Russia. These are just a few instances, the tip of the iceberg. According to a 2022 New York Times investigation, between 2019 and 2021, 183 current senators or representatives disclosed trading stocks or other financial assets by themselves or a close family member. Of these 183 individuals, 97 were part of congressional committees that could have given them insights into the companies whose shares they reported buying or selling. That means that more than half of the U.S. Congress members involved in stock trading had access to privileged information or potentially faced a conflict of interest. Let that sink in. The remarkable wealth of our politicians could be tied to their information edge. But there's another factor to consider: lobbying. Politicians excel at networking and building alliances, and it's a two-way street. They reach out to donors, voters, and businesses, and those folks reach right back to them. The lobbying industry is seriously loaded. In 2021, a whopping $3.7 billion got thrown into federal lobbying alone, primarily by big-shot industries and the firms that speak for them. A good chunk of that cash goes to funding the political campaigns of senators and other officials. A little thank you for helping them stay in the game. It's no surprise, really. Lobbying pays off big time. On average, for every buck big companies drop on lobbying, they rake in about $760 in federal support and tax breaks. Politicians reap both short-term and long-term perks from the lobbying game. In the long run, nearly 2/3 of them transition into lobbying gigs post-politics, often landing roles in the very sectors they favored while in office thanks to their cozy relationships. This revolving door spins smoothly, ensuring they exit the government with cushy industry jobs. In the short term, cozying up to lobbyists has its more immediate benefits. Take the case of Pelosi in 2008. After a few campaign donations from Visa, her husband scored VIP access to a Visa IPO. The Pelosi's bought 5,000 shares of Visa at $44 per share. 2 days later, it was trading at $64. That's $100,000 profit in 2 days. Easy as pie. When politicians are in office, their earning options are pretty limited. However, once they leave the political spotlight, the opportunities become endless. Books, speaking gigs, board memberships, consulting, teaching, podcasts, advertising, and more. With a ready-made audience, publishing books is a surefire way to cash in. Take President Obama, boasting 131 million Twitter followers. Barack Obama published Dreams from My Father in 1996. Not a massive hit back then. Fast forward to his Senate and then President days, and suddenly, everyone wanted that book. In 2009 alone, President Obama pocketed $1 to $5 million from book royalties. Michelle Obama even rocked a stadium tour for her book launch. Bernie Sanders scored big with a best-selling book. Nowadays, it's almost a rite of passage for presidential candidates to publish a book. High-profile politicians rake in substantial earnings through speaking engagements. Once out of office, former President Clinton commanded $200,000 for each speech, while Hillary Clinton received hefty payments ranging from $200,000 to $300,000 per conference appearance. The U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen made over $7 million from over 50 speaking gigs at government-regulated banks, consultancies, and hedge funds during 2019 to 2020. This included a hefty $292,500 from one speech at hedge fund Citadel, $112,500 from a single talk with UBS, $225,000 from PwC, and $270,000 from Standard Chartered. Compare those numbers with her annual salary of $200,000 as head of the U.S. Fed from 2014 to 2018. Our politicians seem to stumble upon numerous money-making avenues, cashing in on high-paid speeches, lucrative book sales, and cushy corporate board positions like it's a walk in the park, rather than leveraging their public service roles for profit. You might argue, sure, top athletes and actors rake in millions through endorsements and book deals, but they can't wield the same influence over people's lives as politicians can. America's founding fathers were wealthy elites, with George Washington standing out as a very wealthy man. The contrast lies in the fact that he committed his life and honor to the country. Had the revolution failed, he might have faced the gallows as a traitor. Now, what about today's politicians? Are they prioritizing personal gain and advancing their financial interest, or are they genuinely serving the country? Before wandering off into the wilds of the internet, drop your 2 cents in the comments section below. And hey, if you got a chuckle or two, consider hitting that like button. It's like giving a virtual high five, and why not subscribe for more humorous takes on the serious stuff? We promise it won't cost you more than a smile and a click, and those are still free the last time we checked. See you next time.